Hi, everyone. Welcome to the session on getting the most from Onshape for your student teams and competitions. During this time, we'll talk about coordinating the design process across your team, utilizing existing CAD components, fabricating from Onshape, presenting your work, and we'll have time at the end for a Q&A session. I'm Mackenzie Burdon. I'm the Education Programs Lead on the PTC Education team. I studied biomedical engineering at Worcester Polytechnic Institute before joining PTC. On the education team, I provide support and enablement to our different users, as well as lead our partnership program. When I was in high school, I was on FRC Team 2648, and I currently volunteer as a ref, scorekeeper, and FTA. I also mentor FRC Team 125. Much of my CAD experience working in projects comes from both my education, my time at PTC, and my time working with FIRST teams. But I'd love to hear from all of you what group design projects you participate in. So you should be able to see in the platform both a chat and a moderated Q&A button. In the chat, it'd be great if you could share what group CAD projects you've participated in. On the education team, we often work with FIRST students, Science Olympiad, VEX Robotics, Formula Student and Formula SAE, as well as Jugend Grundet and many other competitions. In addition, you might do CAD work as part of your courses, like an engineering design class, or in a capstone project. So again, it'd be great just to know in the chat what type of projects you participate in. Great, so starting to see a few things come in here. And so as you're working as a team, you're going through the engineering design process to take a concept to the design and then build and test something. And so as you're working together on this process, it's great to have a platform where you can keep all of your design work and ideas and be able to communicate with one another. And that's where you can use Onshape. This will let you organize and manage that product development process. Your team will be able to access it anywhere, anytime, even if you're working remotely. You'll also be able to work in real time together. You can continuously communicate as you're doing your work, have streamlined reviews and approvals with your professor or coaches and mentors, and have a single source of truth for you all to reference. And finally, there's permission-based access. So you can give certain access to different users as needed. So as you're working as a team, most teams are going through similar phases, starting with a problem analysis where you're going to get some sort of game or design challenge that you're going to work on. Then you need to come up with a plan for how you're going to tackle that challenge. Then you'll begin prototyping your different design ideas. And finally, you'll produce something for a competition or presentation or whatever it may be. As you're going through that prototyping phase, often teams will split up to work on different subsystems or parts of the design so that they can then come together and make that final result. Then they'll need to assemble everything that they've worked on, maybe do some programming and electrical work, and then have an engineering notebook or presentation to showcase their work. But there are some problems that teams commonly run into during these phases. First is you may have some team members wondering what to do next. So while you may have someone that has an idea in their mind and they know exactly what to do, other team members might just not be on the same page. And so they might be trying to search and figure out, what should I be working on? Additionally, there might be mistakes in fabrication as you think you know what the measurements are going to be, or you have an idea in your mind, but you didn't quite do the math right, or you had a miscommunication between team members. And so you end up doing something to the wrong dimensions. There also might be miscommunications about ideas. So while you think that you're on the same page and that you all know what you're working toward, you may have a slight different variation in what you're thinking. So having that design that you can all look at and reference is a way for you to showcase and have that source of truth. You may also end up with an uneven distribution of workload. This is especially prevalent in teams like Formula Student or FIRST, where you have students that are seniors on the team that have been doing it for many years and know exactly what to do, but then you have younger students that are coming in and aren't quite sure of themselves yet. And so I see this all the time where, maybe you'll have a couple of freshmen or sophomores that are really excited to be there, but they just aren't sure. So they find themselves sitting there and not really knowing what to do. And maybe they aren't willing to come back because they feel uncomfortable with not having enough work to do at these events. And then when you go to put all of your designs together into that one final result, sometimes you just don't have things that fit together. Maybe you change something on the drivetrain and where you thought you were going to attach the intake system, actually there's no spot for it at all. or you don't meet the requirements. I know that was one of the hardest things I saw one year when I was volunteering at an event. A robot came that was 20 pounds or 30 pounds overweight. So that was an incredible amount of weight that they were trying to take off at this event. And it's so hard when, that's your first day and you should be so excited to compete, but instead you're scrambling because you had a scale that wasn't calibrated correctly. So being able to have more checks as you're going through the process is always helpful. Or if you're doing something like a business pitch competition or something where you're going to be presenting to judges, maybe you'll have a marketing team or marketing group that's going to be putting together sales materials or presentations that you're going to be showing. And they might be looking for dimensions or pictures or renderings of your robot or whatever it may be that your team's working on putting together. But unfortunately, they'll need to go to those technical people, the people who have been doing the CAD work or who have been just making the robot and asking the questions to figure out what should be shown on this or get the pictures that they need. And unfortunately, as you go and get ready to present, sometimes teams just don't have a record of what they've done. So you know in your mind, you went through all these iterations and your team did a ton of work throughout your season or your class, but you don't have a record of that and you don't know, it can't show off everything that you went through. And that's where you can use CAD. So this will give you an opportunity to communicate your ideas across your entire team. You'll also have that one source of truth that everyone can be referencing as you're going through different changes and iterations. And you'll have a record for your engineering notebook and your presentations. So there's a common question is who on a team should use CAD? And CAD is the language that we're using to turn ideas into products. So in industry, if a company is bringing a product to market, they are going to use CAD to take it from design into the final product. And so that means everyone should be using it, whether it's the person doing the design work themselves or the person fabricating it, or if someone doing the electrical work needs to see things to lay them out. Programmers or marketing team can all be referencing this work. Even if they aren't directly editing the CAD, it's really important for them all to be able to access and use it as a reference. And so the first thing I'm going to talk about is how you can coordinate your design process across your team. If you are on a team like a Formula student team or VEX or FIRST, where you're going to have a team that continues after students graduate, it's really important to make a team account. This account will be tied to the team's contact email to let any team leaders access those team-owned documents and make sure that the documents stay owned by the team once students graduate. To do this, you can go to onshape.com/edu and fill out the form there to create a free EDU account. Once you have your team account, you'll want to work on onboarding all of your team members. So first step will be for them each to sign up for Onshape Education. Then you'll create a team to organize your sets of users, create an organization structure for how you manage your documents and data, set up parts libraries and apps that you can access all of the commonly used models as part of your program, learn the fundamentals of CAD, and then be ready to collaborate. And I will be showing demos of a lot of this process. So first up is teams. Like I mentioned, teams are how you organize your groups of users. By setting up a team in Onshape, you can share your folders or your individual documents with a team instead of having to remember to share every single person every single time. This is also really great if someone gets added to the team later. For example, if someone finds out about your team later in the school year and you don't want to have to go back and remember, okay, we've been working on these documents, so I should give them access to those ones. You can just immediately give them access to everything by adding them into the team. And you can also sort in Onshape by the stuff shared with the team so that you can find everything related to robotics in one place or related to Science Olympiad or whatever it may be. So to create a team, you'll want to go and click your name in the top right of Onshape and go to My Account. Then on the left, there will be a Teams button, and that will let you create a team. You can create as many teams as you want with as many people as you want. So if you want to make a team for mentors and coaches and a team separately for different subsystems, or if you're in a class and you want to make a team for your group members, you can totally do that with as many as you want. And then you can just add all of your team members by email. Next is folders. So once you have your teams to organize your people, you need to organize your CAD work. And folders are how you're going to be able to set up those documents so you can access everything and have it all in one place. So to create a folder, you'll just click on the blue Create button at the top left in Onshape, then click folder, give it a name. A lot of teams will make a folder for every year or for every season, whatever that may be for you. And then that's the place where you can put all of your documents as you're working on that project. Next, we'll talk about how you can actually collaborate with your team. The great thing about Onshape is it feels very similar to working in something like Google Docs. So if you've ever had to write a document with other people in your class, or if you had to make a presentation together, there's some very similar functionality in how you can interact with other people. So I actually took this video as a bunch of us on the education team were making this concert stage for our internal design competition. And so you can see in each of these tabs on the bottom, there's a little icon for different people showing that they're in that tab working. So it's a great way just to know where people are and what they're doing. So for example, here I can see Naomi was working on this piano. We're all able to work in this document together, so our geometry can reference each other and we can make sure that we're making a product that will all come together in the end, but we still have our own spaces. You can also use things like follow mode to understand where your team members are, and you can use things like comments to communicate and discuss what's going on, and versions and history to track all the changes that your team has gone through. So let's go back to follow mode for a moment. So if you want to see exactly what someone's doing inside of Onshape, we'll use what's called follow mode. And so here again, we can see all the different people that are inside of our Onshape document with us. And if you double click on someone's icon, that will then enter follow mode. So you can see the exact view that they're seeing and where their mouse is in the workspace. This is great for giving someone advice or feedback or just knowing what they're doing. And then to communicate on your design, that's where we can use comments. So we can create a new comment to tell someone what I'm working on or give them advice on what they're working on. And we'll just have that record all in one spot of everything we're discussing about our design. You can tag people or specific things in the model to let someone know exactly what you're referring to. I mean, we can use markup as well, just to really make it clear exactly what we're talking about. Then you can reply to other people's comments so that you really have that dialogue and discussion all in one place about what's happening with your design. You can edit, delete, and mark things as resolved as needed once you get those comments done. Another thing to mention is tasks in Onshape. When you're leaving a comment, you can tag someone and then you'll have the option to assign it to them. So by assigning something to someone, that's going to give them an action item in Onshape of something that they should be working on. This is a great way to keep track of what all of your team members are doing. So if you're a coach or a teacher or a mentor and you're trying to tell your students, here's how we want to divide this up and work, you can actually assign that to them so that they can know this is the part that I'm modeling and what I should be working on. Or as a student, it's a great way to just communicate to your other students or people on your team, this is what I'm doing, and have that list to refer to. Another great way to manage your tasks and projects is with OneIPM. This is an Onshape application that you can add in. So this will make tasks and projects that are associated with your documents, parts, and assemblies, and give you some other views for being able to monitor and see what's going on in those projects. I'd say this is especially helpful for larger teams, and it's free for first students and mentors if you go to oneipm.com/first. If you're doing a different student program or a student or a class or something like that for education, you can certainly fill out their contact form and see if you can also get free access as well. So now we're going to talk about using existing components. The big thing I'll say here is do not reinvent the wheel. So if you look at a wheel like this one, it's something that I'm going to buy from a vendor and add on to my robot or whatever it may be that I'm making. There's no reason for me to go and remodel that. Oftentimes it can be found from the vendor website, or there are many parts libraries, standard content, feature script, other places that you can get these commonly used components to insert in your assemblies. So this will give you so much more time to spend modeling and fabricating the things that are custom to your team, rather than reinventing the wheel and going back and modeling those commonly used components. So first we'll talk about the first sets of libraries. So for FTC, Team 2901 created this great parts library that's organized into different folders for each of the common vendors, like GoBuilda, Pitsco, ServoCity, Rev Robotics. Many of those vendors can all be found there. so you can quickly insert those into your assembly in Onshape. For FRC, a group of teams called MKCAD put together another library. And this one's actually an app that you can add through the Onshape App Store. If you aren't part of FIRST, there's still many other parts libraries out there. I would recommend starting with search in public documents in Onshape. So when you're in your documents page, you can click on the public tab and then search in public for your different program. So for example, I know there's a lot of different VEX libraries out there if that's something you're interested in trying to find. And additionally, there's many vendor models available through the Onshape App Store. When you're looking at Onshape, you can navigate to the App Store by clicking the button in the top right. And that will bring you into the App Store. Here you can see a whole bunch of different categories of integrated applications like simulation, rendering, CAM, and these manufacturers models. MKCAD is a great parts library that can be used for FRC teams. So you can subscribe to it if you haven't already. It's completely free, and then you'll see it inside of your modeling window. So here I can click the little MK button, and then I'll get this parts inserter that I can see here to find all these common components. And so for example, if I wanted to insert a gearbox, I could go to the gearboxes section. I could find the type of gearbox that I want to insert. And then this one's a configurable one. So I have a whole bunch of options for customizing what I want this gearbox to have. For example, I can change the shaft cutoff. I can change the gear ratios. I can change how many motors, or even what type of motors. And so it's just a great way to be quickly inserting all of these components that your team needs. Then once the tool's inserted it, you can add it into your assembly and keep going much more quickly than if you had to go to that vendor website, import it into Onshape, and then go from there. Another great way to quickly add components is with standard content in Onshape. So when you're in that insert dialog in Onshape, you'll have a few different options, and one of those is standard content. This will give you a lot of common fasteners, bolts and screws and nuts, as well as washers and rings and many other things that you might need. Then you can configure those as needed or use the measuring sizing tool. And then you can quickly insert those components instead of having to, once again, go find them or model them yourselves. So it's just a much faster way to speed up your workflow and know exactly what you're going to need to have in your final fabricated design. Another great way to quickly create parts is with custom features. One of the awesome things about the Onshape platform is that as our developers were creating the tools that you commonly use, like sketches and extrudes and revolves and all of those different features, those buttons that you click on in Onshape, they also made that code available through what's called feature script. And this is a language that can be used to create custom features. And so many users in Onshape have taken advantage of this and created custom features to generate things that they need, like Lego bricks or spur gears or beams or spacers or something that's just a geometry that's going to be very repetitive, or you may need to use that a lot. They can make those custom features that will quickly create that for you. And so you can make your own custom features or take advantage of some of the ones made by other Onshape users. And so here I have an example of using the spur gear feature script. So I click the spur gear feature, and then here I can actually customize exactly what I need to have on my gear. So how many teeth I want it to have, or some of these other factors that may be important to what I'm designing. So instead of having to go and custom make this entire thing in just a few seconds and a few clicks, I was able to have that gear generated for me. And then I can see it in that parts list, so I have that to reference and use in my assembly. All right, next we're going to talk about fabricating your design. So when you make this digital product, you're probably going to then want to turn it into a physical product. First, you can export or use a connector application to manufacture those models. So if you're laser cutting, you'll probably want to export a DXF or DWG. If you're 3D printing, you can export an STL. And in either case, for laser cutting, you may be able to just directly export and use that on your laser cutter, or you might need to do some processing. For 3D printing, you can then export it and bring it into whatever your favorite splicing software is that you may typically use. For a CNC router, you can either export a step and once again bring it into your favorite application, or there's a whole bunch of integrated Onshape apps. Kirimoto is a great one that's cloud-based. So if you're using a Chromebook or something that can't use a downloaded application, Kirimoto is a great way to go. But then there's also a whole bunch of other connector applications. If you're using something like ScriptCam or Mastercam or many of these others, you can just directly integrate into Onshape. And lastly is the bill of materials. So as you're going to fabricate your design, it's great to take this bill of materials. So you can click the button on the right side of Onshape and pop this open and see exactly what it is that you've included in your assembly. So you can make sure that you have all of those components when you go to assemble the real thing. So for example, if you used a whole bunch of different standard content to make those nuts and bolts, you could look and see how many you needed. So that way, when you go to purchase them, if you go to the hardware store, or if you're making a purchase online, you have that list to reference. It can make sure that your team has everything they need, so you aren't scrambling at the last minute or making a whole bunch of different runs to the store to get what you need. And finally, we'll talk about presenting your work. It's so important to showcase your process. So your team has gone through all this work to create this incredible product, and now you definitely want to show off everything that you went through and what you did. One of the great ways to do that is using versions to demonstrate those iterations. So as your team's going through and working and making this design, you can use the versions to take a snapshot of what the model will look like at different points in time. And this is great to reference and show the different milestones or changes that your team went through. Some teams will do this on a regular time interval. So they may say every day we're going to make a version, or every week we're going to make a version. Others will do it at specific points when they've hit a milestone, like they finished their drivetrain and they know they're going to make some changes. So I'll make a version now so that I have the V1 drivetrain ready to go, and then we'll make another version if we do a V2 drivetrain. The other thing that's really great about Onshape is you can use documents, since they can contain so many things, as one showcase platform. And so you can use the tabs in your document to contain all of your project work and show off what you're doing. So if you're going to a judge or a professor, or you're going to try and find a new sponsor for your team, you could have up your Onshape document to use as a presentation platform. You could even have it open on your iPad or your phone and tap through the different tabs to show off what you've done. This can be in images, videos, PDFs, drawings, and of course the parts and assemblies that your team has made. One of my favorite examples of a showcase document came from a virtual competition that we hosted in 2020 called Robots to the Rescue. This team, FTC Team 2142, won the Darn Good Documentation Award because they did such a great job of making this showcase document. So definitely a huge shout out to this team. So I'll show off what this looked like. So you start off inside of their main assembly, so you can take a look at their CAD work and see what they did there. And then we'll take a look. They added a PDF documenting everything that their team worked on. So they incorporated the problem that they were trying to solve and how they solved that problem and what their team solution was. They then added a folder of other supportive written documentation. This has included things like manufacturing instructions, some different cool graphics that they created from their robot, as well as a more detailed bill of materials that talks about where they could get it from different vendors and specific part numbers from those vendors. This is my favorite part, but they also added this really cool video with their team members actually came on and told us about what they did and talked about who their team was and their experience in making this. So it was just incredible to hear from the team members themselves what they had worked on. So I loved getting to see that video as we were judging this. They also separated all of their CAD assemblies into different, or all their CAD work into different folders, so that as judges, we could look through those and find the things that we were most interested in or were most important to us, because they were very well organized and laid out for us to go back through and reference. And so once you have your document at a point where you want to share it with someone, you may even just want to share it with your parents, or if you want to share it with your teachers or your professors or your judges or whoever that is, you can then go into the share button in Onshape, go to the link sharing tab and turn on link sharing. And this will generate a link that anyone can view. They won't be able to edit your work, but they will be able to see it even if they don't have an Onshape account. So again, this is just a great way to show off what you've done to someone who may not even have any CAD experience. And we're actually going to take the link from the showcase, the Darn Good Documentation document created, and we'll add that to the chat so you can take a look at that showcase document and use that as an example if you're interested. And so that's everything I had planned to share with you all today, but if you have any questions, I'd love to hear them.
Yeah, Mackenzie, we've had a couple come in while you've been talking. So let's go with this first one. Do you have any other example designs from other teams using Onshape that we could look through?
Yeah, absolutely. So one big example is that Robots to the Rescue competition that we hosted in 2020. On the Robots to the Rescue webpage, there's all of the different submissions that we got that year and all of the winners. So I'd highly recommend taking a look at those. Those were some incredibly well-designed robots. The other thing that I would talk about, or that I would take a look at, is in the public documents. So you can search in public for anything in your program. So again, with VEX robots, you can search for VEX, you can search for Formula Student or whatever program you're participating in, or if you're making a drone for a capstone project, anything like that, you can take a look in public and you'll be able to find a whole bunch of documents that other people have shared and made public.
Great. Another one we have is, which Onshape plan should we use for our teams? What if the students, mentors, or coaches aren't associated necessarily with our school?
Yeah, absolutely. So as long as you're using it for education purposes, you can use the Onshape education plan. And so you can get that at onshape.com/edu. The thing with the education plan that's really great is that your work will be kept private. So that way you can work on your team's design without having to showcase it until you're ready to do so. And if you're homeschooled and you aren't associated with a school, or if you're a mentor and you're going to make a special account just for using this for education purposes, you can absolutely sign up and make that education account.
Cool. And along the same lines, there's a question about, I believe you were talking about making a school account for your team. How would you go about that for a school that maybe has a lower budget? Is that free?
Yeah, it's all entirely free. So the standard Onshape education account is completely free. So you'll make a free account for your team and every team member can get a free account. That's one of the great things that's very helpful for using this in education is, again, that Onshape standard account is completely free.
Cool. Another question we have is about, where can they discuss with other users that are in their program about how they're using Onshape?
Yeah, so one of the great things as well is we have an Onshape forum. So forum.onshape.com can be used to go on and discuss with other educators or other students or anyone inside of the Onshape community what it is that you're doing. So you can go there and ask specific questions. We've seen lots of discussions happening, especially around the FIRST robotics community inside of the forum. There's also user group meetings, and those are published on the user group page on the website. And those are another place where you can go and join conversations to talk with other Onshape users and show off your work or see some of their work and get some design feedback and learn some best practices from other Onshape users.
Great. And when you were talking about the parts library, a user had a question about how would they go about creating their own parts library if they aren't in FIRST or VEX, where there are already some of those libraries.
Yeah, so both of those libraries are really good examples. And so especially the MKCAD library, the way that they've set up their documents, anyone can access those. So you can go and you can search for MKCAD, and I definitely use that as an example. So setting up a document that has a whole bunch of different parts models in them, so people can quickly find that document and insert from that document. It's just a really nice way to make your library visible and able to be used by other people in your community. And then once you get the Onshape models and documents set up, then I would go ahead and look at what MKCAD did as far as creating the application. They've made their code that they use for that public. They posted it on GitHub, so you can use that as a reference if you want to make an application. The other thing I will say is for many of these components, you don't have to model them completely from scratch yourself. Most vendors will put up step files or something else that you can find to grab those and import into Onshape. And then you can set up your library so that you can insert those quickly once you get them imported one time.
Great. That's really cool of them that they put all of their information up on GitHub. Mm-hmm. Another question we have is around Onshape competitions. Do you think Onshape will host its own school-related competition? It sounds like they think their school would love to join.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're actually hosting another school competition starting March 21st with Vex Robotics, you don't have to, with the REC Foundation using Vex Robot components, you don't have to be on a Vex Robotics team, but it's going to be using those components, and more information will be launched on March 21st. But the name of the challenge is Nature Recovery Robots, and you can search for that. And we'll certainly be posting more as we get closer to March 21st. But any education user, or any student, I should say, whether you be in middle school, high school, or at the college level, will all be able to participate in that. And we'll have many different prizes that we're giving out to the winners of that competition.
Great. That looks like all the questions we have so far.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining. We've really appreciated having you here and being able to share this with you. Definitely get in contact with us if you have any other questions. We're happy to share. And again, thank you for being here.